আগে এই পানিতে গোসল করতাম, ফ্যামিলির সবাই খাইতাম, পাক শাক করতো, ওখানে এই পানি খাওয়ান যায় না।
কিছু কিছু পোলা পানি আছে গোসল করে খালে নদীতে গোসল করা অনুযায়ী তাদের গোড়া গাড়ি এবং গা ফাঁসা ওঠে।
As dawn breaks over Dhaka, the sunlight fails to pierce through the thick gray smog. The blaring horns, the coughing of children, and the stench of garbage mixed with black smoke from aging factories all merge into a suffocating atmosphere of filth and poverty. In a place where every canal is pitch black and every alley is choked with waste and sewage, life still clings on desperately. This is Dhaka, a city that never sleeps but is gasping for breath every single day. Number 1. Dirty waste everywhere. Stepping outside in Dhaka, you are immediately met by a thick layer of dust settling on every doorstep. Narrow alleys are crammed with garbage such as plastic wrappers, scraps of paper, rotting food-torn bags, and even cow dung. Sidewalks are almost invisible beneath towering piles of trash, and the overwhelming stench forces anyone passing by to cover their nose. The area around the Hatirjheel Lake, once restored as a tourist attraction, is now blanketed by a foul odor. The water has turned black, coated with a film of oil, making a simple walk along the lake nearly unbearable. On the highways leading into the city center, heaps of trash rise like small mountains, emitting a stench so intense that many bus passengers have been unable to endure it, some even vomiting. Bus conductors try to spray air freshener, but the harsh combination of chemical scents and rotting waste only makes matters worse. Torn garbage bags spill onto the streets, swarmed by flies and insects, while the pungent smell of human urine and animal waste lingers in the air. A clear reflection of the severe neglect of the waste management system. According to official data in 2025, Dhaka produces around 6,500 tons of solid waste every single day. But more than half remains uncollected. Much of it ends up dumped directly into canals and drains, clogging waterways, fueling floods, and spreading disease. Hatirjheel itself has become one of the city's most notorious pollution hotspots, with ammonia levels and biochemical oxygen demand soaring far beyond safe thresholds. The grim reality is that this situation is not confined to one area. Whether you move through bustling street markets or along the city's main roads, signs of neglect and filth are everywhere. Piles of uncollected trash, open drains, and foul-smelling puddles remind you that this is not just a sanitation issue, it is a public health crisis in the making. And as you take in these sights and smells, one question inevitably comes to mind. How can the capital of an entire nation be left to drown in such unrelenting dirt? Number 2. Deadly water source. Once known as the Old Ganges and the lifeblood of Dhaka, the Buriganga River, is now a toxic black ribbon cutting through the city. Its surface glistens not with sunlight, but with an oily film of chemical waste from tanneries, dyeing factories, and unregulated workshops. Human waste flows in unchecked, mixing with industrial effluents to create a stench. So pungent, it can be smelled from streets hundreds of meters away. This river, which once sustained thousands of families, is now considered biologically dead during the dry season. 20 years ago, Nurul Islam, now 70, earned his living as a fisherman along the Buriganga. Back then, the water was clean alive, he recalls. We bathed here, we drank from it. There were so many fish that the river fed entire neighborhoods. Today, the same man pushes a food cart near the riverbank, forced to abandon the trade that supported his family for generations. Now there's no life in it. He sighs, pointing to the dark, foul-smelling current. Bangladesh, with nearly 170 million people, depends on over 220 rivers for food transportation and daily survival. Dhaka alone is home to more than 23 million residents, many of whom have lost their livelihoods as the waterways collapse under relentless pollution. A recent survey by the River and Delta Research Center confirmed that pollution levels in the Buriganga during the dry season are far beyond national safety standards. Industrial wastewater accounts for the largest share of contamination, with tannery byproducts and untreated textile dyes pouring in day and night. Environmental activist Sharif Jamil of the Bangladesh Poribesh Andolon Group warns, once majestic and crystal clear, the Buriganga is now on the brink of death. We call it a biologically dead river because no fish or aquatic life can survive here anymore. Even during the monsoon, when rains dilute some of the toxins, the river's color remains a murky black, and its banks are lined with floating garbage. Standing by the river today, one cannot help but wonder how a waterway that shaped the city's history has been reduced to a flowing graveyard of chemicals and waste. Number 3. Air like cigarette smoke. In Dhaka, the very act of breathing has become a health hazard. The average concentration of fine particulate matter, known as PM 2.5, hovers around 80 micrograms per cubic meter, about 15 times higher than the World Health Organization's safe limit. In some dry months between November and March, levels can spike to 2 or even 3 times this average, leaving the air heavy with toxins that you can taste on your tongue and feel burning your lungs. According to recent data, inhaling the air in Dhaka each day can be equivalent to smoking nearly 2 cigarettes, a terrifying reality for more than 23 million residents. Bangladesh has made notable progress in human development over the past decade. However, this achievement is overshadowed by skyrocketing air pollution. Across the country, annual PM 2.5 concentrations range from 60 to 100 micrograms per cubic meter, while in Dhaka, the levels often approach 90 to 100. These particles are so tiny, much smaller than a single strand of hair, that they bypass the body's defenses, penetrate deep into the lungs, and even enter the bloodstream. Over time, this exposure leads to increased risks of heart disease, lung cancer, strokes, and other life-threatening conditions. The toll is already staggering. The Bangladesh National Environmental Analysis Report of 2023 by the World Bank estimates that outdoor and indoor air pollution contributes to over 159,000 premature deaths every year in Bangladesh. It also accounts for more than 2.5 billion days of illness annually, with over 55% of these early deaths linked directly to environmental health risks. Beyond the human cost, the economic losses are crippling. The World Bank reported in 2022 that air pollution drains an estimated 4.4% of Bangladesh's gross domestic product each year. Millions of dollars lost due to medical expenses, reduced productivity, and the long-term impact on public health. Dhaka is consistently ranked among the world's most polluted cities, and scientists warn that without significant interventions, such as controlling emissions from brick kilns, outdated vehicles, and unregulated factories, its residents will continue to pay with their health and years of their lives. The city's air, once a sign of life, now silently steals it away. Number 4. Traffic chaos. In Dhaka, the sound of car horns is as constant as the heartbeat of the city. Before sunrise, roads are already choked with rickshaws, battered buses, and motorbikes vying for every inch of space. By mid-morning, the streets turn into an immovable grid of vehicles, each exhaling black smoke that thickens the air. For pedestrians especially, children and the elderly, the streets are not pathways, but danger zones where a single misstep could be fatal. With over 20 million people crammed into just 300 square kilometers, Dhaka's traffic nightmare is unlike anything else in South Asia. The numbers paint a bleak picture. Vehicle speeds have dropped to less than 5 kilometers per hour, barely faster than walking. What should be a 10-minute trip now stretches into an hour or more. According to the Accident Research Institute of Buet, traffic congestion robs Dhaka of nearly 82 lakh working hours every single day. Analysts suggest this chronic gridlock drags down Bangladesh's GDP by up to 10% each year. Infrastructure is at the heart of the problem. Dhaka's roads were never built to accommodate this sheer volume of traffic. As the middle class grows, car ownership has soared, while public transport remains inadequate and poorly maintained. For many residents, rickshaws and private vehicles are the only viable options, further clogging the city's veins. The consequences extend beyond inconvenience. Vehicles idling for hours pump toxic fumes into the atmosphere, worsening the already hazardous air quality. Mental stress runs high as commuters spend hours stuck in traffic while road accidents rise due to impatient and reckless driving. In June, the city was brought to a complete halt when a massive rally by Bangladesh Islami Andolan at Suhrawardi Udyan caused traffic to freeze across major areas like Gulistan, Jatrabari, Syedabad, and Kakrail. For drivers and passengers alike, it was not just a delay, it was a daily reminder of how fragile and suffocating Dhaka's public spaces have become. Number 5. House is not like home. By the year 2050, nearly 68% of the world's population is expected to live in urban areas close to 7 billion people. According to United Nations projections, almost 2/3 of them, around 4.6 billion, could be living in slums. Dhaka, Bangladesh is already a striking example of this grim future. With more than 20 million residents packed into a city of roughly 300 square kilometers, over 40% of its population survives in makeshift settlements built from scraps of wood, tin, and fabric. Take Reina, a mother of 2 who lives in a busy Dhaka street. Her home is little more than a few square meters of sidewalk, essentially a stairway down into a slum where the family cooks, eats, and sleeps. Her husband works irregular manual jobs, and she sells small goods just to scrape together enough for a single meal. At least in this city, my husband can find work, she says. There are more chances here than in our village. Dhaka's slums, scattered across every district, operate in a tangled web of informal systems. Some settlements have access to electricity and water, but often through illegal tapping of public lines. These resources are resold to families at inflated prices, controlled by local power brokers. This black market infrastructure resembles the situation in places like Port-au-Prince, Haiti, where gangs dictate access to basic utilities using intimidation and violence to protect their profits. According to the World Bank, nearly half of Bangladesh's urban population lives in slums. The United Nations estimates that by the year 2025, Dhaka's population will reach 30 million, stretching its already fragile housing situation to the breaking point. For many families, even the smallest shack, barely shielded from the monsoon rains, is a luxury. Land rights are almost non-existent. Eviction can happen overnight, with bulldozers clearing entire neighborhoods to make way for development projects, leaving residents with nowhere to go and no compensation. Walking through these settlements, one is struck by the resilience of the people, but also by the fragility of their existence. A single storm fire or government clearance could erase their lives overnight. In Dhaka, home is not a safe haven, but a daily gamble for survival. Number 6. Urban overloading. Number 6. Urban overloading. Dhaka is a city on the edge of collapse, not because of a single disaster, but due to the relentless weight of its own growth. Every year, nearly 500,000 new migrants pour into the capital, seeking jobs and opportunities that rural areas can no longer provide. This wave of migration is pushing the city's water systems, healthcare facilities, and schools far beyond their limits. The result is a metropolis where the demand for essential services is growing faster than the ability to build or repair them. Bangladesh's pace of urbanization may appear slower than that of some other Asian nations, but the consequences are just as dramatic. By the year 2050, the country's urban population is projected to surpass 112 million people. Dhaka alone, currently ranked as the 11th largest megacity in the world, is expected to climb to 6th place by the year 2030, with nearly 27 million residents. This extreme urban shift is creating enormous economic, social, and infrastructural challenges. Housing has become one of the city's biggest crises. Poor families unable to afford even modest rent are forced to move to the outskirts. They settle on vacant government land, roadside strips, or unused private plots, creating sprawling slums built from tin wood and scraps. These areas are overcrowded and lack basic sanitation, turning them into breeding grounds for disease. Transportation is another constant headache. Rickshaws. Many of them unregistered clog the narrow roads, while poorly planned networks and weak traffic enforcement result in endless gridlock. Hours wasted in traffic jams drain productivity and fuel economic losses. In the slums, healthcare is almost non-existent. Children and women face the highest risks, often suffering from diarrhea, respiratory infections, and fever due to poor hygiene. The constant influx of uneducated rural migrants also drives up the urban illiteracy rate, while existing schools buckle under the pressure, leaving countless children without classrooms. Even essential utilities, such as drainage, sewage systems, water supply, and waste collection, fall short of demand. Despite improvements in major cities, the infrastructure remains woefully inadequate for a population that keeps growing without pause. Number 7. Women in the garment industry in Bangladesh. The ready-made garment sector is the lifeblood of the national economy, accounting for more than 80% of total export revenue and employing roughly 4 million workers, most of them women. These women, often from rural backgrounds, have been instrumental in transforming Bangladesh into one of the world's leading apparel exporters. However, despite their critical role, female garment workers continue to face exploitation and systemic challenges that hinder both their economic empowerment and personal well-being. More than 3.5 million women work 10 to 12 hours a day for meager wages in cramped, poorly ventilated factories. Basic facilities such as safe toilets, clean drinking water, and sanitary supplies are often inadequate or entirely absent. Gender-based violence and harassment remain pervasive but largely underreported. A recent study found that among 140 garment workers surveyed, 45% reported experiencing sexual harassment, 22% faced psychological abuse, 17% endured verbal insults, 9% were subjected to economic exploitation, and 7% suffered physical violence. These statistics, while alarming, likely understate the true scale of the problem. Wage inequality further compounds the hardship. Female workers earn up to 30% less than their male counterparts, leaving many with barely enough to cover rent and food, let alone save for the future. Limited financial literacy among these women makes it even harder to manage their earnings or escape cycles of poverty. Many female workers have not completed primary education, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation and ill-prepared to adapt to technological changes that could open pathways to better jobs or promotions. Deep-rooted gender norms and societal expectations also play a role in limiting women's career advancement. Women are often expected to prioritize caregiving responsibilities over professional aspirations. As a result, many drop out of the workforce early, contributing to a decline in the proportion of women employed in the garment sector. A troubling trend that threatens both the industry's productivity and women's economic agency. Despite being the backbone of Bangladesh's garment industry, these women remain caught in a web of structural inequalities. Addressing these challenges will require a comprehensive approach, from improving working conditions and enforcing labor rights to promoting gender equality and challenging harmful social norms. Number 8. Child marriage. Child marriage remains one of Bangladesh's most pressing social issues, trapping millions of young girls in a cycle of poverty, lost education, and lifelong vulnerability. According to UNICEF, more than half, around 51% of Bangladeshi girls are married before reaching the age of 18. For these girls, the prospect of finishing school, gaining independence, or pursuing a career is abruptly replaced by early motherhood, financial dependence, and a higher risk of abuse. The root of this crisis lies in deep-seated gender inequality and the persistent belief that daughters are of lesser value than sons. Poverty is the single strongest driver of child marriage. Statistics reveal that nearly 64% of women aged 20 to 24 who were married before 18 belong to the poorest households, compared to about 33% from wealthier families. In communities where financial struggles are constant, young girls are often viewed as economic burdens. Parents see marrying them off early, sometimes even to much older men who already have wives, as a way to secure their daughter's future and reduce household expenses. Cultural norms and social pressures amplify the problem. Many families fear the stigma of having unmarried daughters, and there is a deep-rooted obsession with preserving the purity of young girls. Surveys show that nearly 7 out of 10 people in Bangladesh believe that a woman gains her identity and social status primarily through marriage. This mindset continues to fuel early and forced marriages despite the obvious harm it causes. Humanitarian crises make the situation worse. During natural disasters, economic shocks, or conflicts, families often see early marriage as a way to cope with worsening poverty or protect daughters from gender-based violence. Unfortunately, these rushed decisions usually lead to even harsher realities. Girls dropped out of school are left dependent and vulnerable, while their health deteriorates due to early pregnancies and lack of medical care. Breaking this cycle requires more than just laws. It calls for challenging social norms, improving access to education, and empowering families to see the true potential of their daughters. Until then, child marriage will remain a heavy chain holding back the future of millions of girls in Bangladesh. Number 9. Change is necessary. Dhaka stands as a sobering testament to the harsh combination of dirty and impoverished. Its crowded streets, polluted air, and fragile communities reveal how neglect, rapid urbanization, and inequality can turn a thriving capital into a city constantly fighting for survival. However, Dhaka's reality is not a story without hope. With the right mindset, targeted policies, and collective action, change is not just possible, it is urgent. The first lesson Dhaka teaches us is that environmental and social crises are deeply interconnected. Pollution, unregulated growth, and poverty feed off each other, rotating a cycle that worsens year after year. But with strategic leadership, even small steps can make a visible difference in a short time. Governments and local authorities can launch nationwide cleanliness campaigns, encouraging citizens to maintain clean frontages for their homes, shops, offices, and restaurants. Dust, loose bricks, or construction debris should never be allowed to clutter the streets. A coordinated effort, supported by media outreach, television, newspapers, social platforms, and local announcements, could spark a wave of civic responsibility. To ensure lasting impact, non-compliance must be addressed through fines applied equally to individuals, businesses, and even public institutions. The second lesson is that tackling a city's challenges requires both national and global action. Dhaka's issues, such as air pollution or garment industry exploitation, are tied to global supply chains and consumption patterns. International brands and consumers share a responsibility to demand fair labor practices and sustainable production methods. Likewise, global environmental initiatives can support Bangladesh in building cleaner infrastructure, developing green technologies, and improving waste management. Most importantly, Dhaka reminds us that progress begins with awareness and willingness to act. A cleaner city is not a distant dream. It can begin with small collective actions that scale up into national transformation. Dhaka may currently represent the struggle between survival and decay, but it also carries the potential to inspire change. If we choose to listen and respond. We have just taken a glimpse inside Bangladesh's dirty and impoverished reality, a world where polluted air, toxic rivers, and fragile shelters define daily life. However, beyond the dust and chaos, we see people who endure with resilience and hope, waiting for change that often feels far away. Dhaka is not just a city drowning in problems. It is a living story of survival and a reminder that the world cannot afford to look away. If this journey has opened your heart or made you see the hidden struggles of Bangladesh, let's not let their voices fade. Like this video and subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary, so together we can keep uncovering the raw, unfiltered truths from places the world rarely dares to look.